Welcome into the Alabama Football Report, and we're starting Texas A&M hate week off early. If you hate the Aggies, and I know that's a strong word, but listen, I've lived in Texas a long time. I've also been a Alabama Crimson Tide fan for a long time. There's not very many schools I dislike more than Texas A&M, and if you're right there with me, hit that big red button and subscribe, and hey, we'll have you up to date on the Alabama Crimson Tide all week long as they get prepared to head down to College Station and face off against the number 15 Texas A&M Aggies. And listen, we'll have you covered from news, rumors, predictions, latest recruiting updates, and even an injury report. All you got to do is hit that big red button to stay in the know. Oh, it's the Alabama Football Report Overreaction Sunday. I am your host, RC Maxfield, and man, that one felt good yesterday down there in Tuscaloosa as the Alabama Crimson Tide defeated one of their old offensive coordinators in Lane Kiffin and the number 12 Ole Miss Rebels. And you know what? Let's jump right into the overreactions that I had from this one. Matt, hit me with that first one. Appreciate you, bud. Number one, Bryce Young is the best QB in the country. I said it. I don't care what you think if you're not a fan of the Alabama Crimson Tide because I've got the stats to prove it. Now, these stats against Ole Miss are not the most eye-popping stats, right? But he didn't have to do much when Brian Robinson Jr. had 36. Yes, you can turn the volume up if you need to a little bit. 36 carries against the Rebels on Saturday. Here's Bryce Young's line, 21 of 27, 241 yards, 2 TDs, and 1 interception. And listen, I get it. Those aren't the stats you probably expected to see in one of the biggest hyped shootouts in the country this weekend and had one of the highest over-unders at 79.5 is what it closed at over at BetUS. And I'm going to be honest, he's just a freshman, right? I get it. He is just a freshman. But my goodness, is Bryce Young elite. You know, he only played in a few games last year, really starting to get his stride here and taking over for Mac Jones. But this man is absolutely elite. He kind of reminds me, and I'm not trying to put too much pressure on him. I'm really not. He reminds me of Russell Wilson. Let me know down in the comments if y'all think the same thing or even who he reminds you of. But right now in the early stages, and I get it, it's 5 games in. I'm not trying to compare him to one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks right now in this generation. But that's kind of the traits that he has. He's super smart. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he gets out there. And what do you think of this? Type RT for Roll Tide if you think Bryce Young is the best QB in America, because I do, and I don't even know if it's close. I thought Matt Corral would really give it a fight, but you got to give credit to the Alabama defense, and we'll talk about them in just a minute. But we got to talk about today's video sponsor, and that's BetUS. I'm telling you right now, this is the best place for sports gambling on the internet. All you have to do is go to chatsports.com/TideBet to get the best deposit bonus on the internet today. And I know what you're thinking, RC. Of course you're going to say that. You know, they're the sponsor of your video. I truly mean it. I mean, nobody else on the internet is giving you a 125% deposit bonus when you use the promo code TIDE125 after going to the website, chatsports.com/TideBet. Listen, you could go on there, put $100 in, $200 in, and they'll match it and then some. If you put $200 in, you'll have $250 from BetUS, bringing your grand total to $450, and that might last you for 2 seasons, especially if you listen to us on the gambling advice here over at Chat Sports. But again, go to chatsports.com/TideBet, use the promo code TIDE125, and get the best deposit bonus on the internet today, 125%. Who the hell's doing that? Oh, it's BetUS. And go to chatsports.com/TideBet. Number 2 overreaction after the win against Ole Miss. Alabama has the best defense in America. I know what you're thinking, RC. We saw what Georgia did to Arkansas. Well, I don't really care about Arkansas. I think they're one-dimensional. Alabama, well, they're not one-dimensional when it comes down to it. And everything that we've seen from this Alabama offense, including the performance against Ole Miss, proves to me that they're not one-dimensional, right? Because you look at this and you have the total yards there. You have the passing, and I think this is going to be a prototypical game for the offense. The reason I say they're a defensive team is because you look at some of the guys on their defense, and really what it comes down to for me is Will Anderson is just absolutely elite. But I also think that the offense is right up there as well, and the offense to me is one of those things where Alabama hasn't been known for it a lot really in the past ever, other than maybe the past really half decade, maybe 7 years. But for me, when you look at what's going on and the offense on this team, they're carried by the defense. And that's something that we have said a lot. And you better believe that this is the best defense in America. And the reason I say that is the offense allows it to be, right? You're not putting so much pressure on your defense that they're out there for 35, 40 minutes a game. This defense is well rested because the offense can go out there and have a good attack. And that's something that really comes back to what they did against Ole Miss, and really just a 291 yards. I mean, who's doing that against Lane Kiffin? Nobody, except for Alabama. 213 yards for a guy and Matt Corral, who I thought was right up there with Bryce Young in terms of putting him in the Heisman conversation. And Alabama's defense just negated him all game and really just limited him. He had that rushing touchdown and a little garbage time action as well. But you eliminated the Ole Miss run game, which they've used a little bit more, had 2 sacks, had some QB hurries as well. This defense is the best one in America, but I want you to tell me if you agree. Type 1 for yes or type 2 for no if you think Bama has the best defense in the country. And again, I think this all comes back to the offense. Really what the offense is doing and allowing the defense to get well rested and take chances, because it's not one of those Alabama defenses that, has the most talent that we've ever seen, I don't think. There's plenty of talent. We're talking about Alabama. But the offense allows the talent that the defense has to really be creative and go out there, blitz the quarterback, drop back, and really not have to worry about, oh my God, is my offense going to put pressure on me? No, they're going to make it much easier. But hey, you know the drill. I mean, it's never too early to start hating on Auburn, right? I mean, my goodness, I can't stand the Tigers down there in Auburn. And who throws toilet paper like that? Let's be real about this. Nobody's doing that. We need toilet paper. Stop doing that. And if you hate Auburn, hit that big red button and subscribe to the best Alabama football coverage on YouTube. And the best part about it, it's absolutely free. All you got to do is hit that big red button to stay in the know about the Crimson Tide all season long right here on the Alabama Football Report. The number 3 overreaction I have after the number 12 Ole Miss Rebels get shellacked by your Alabama Crimson Tide, the number 1 team in the country, is the title line is 100% fixed. And really what this comes down to is Evan Neal, I think, has really just transitioned to being a leader and really that guy that you can build the offensive line around. He's really one of those guys that's going to be a top 5 pick in my opinion. He's the best offensive lineman in the country. There was a lot of fixes that needed to happen, right, for Alabama on that O-line after really, I guess, the first 2 games. But for me, it's gone. Those concerns are absolutely gone about the O-line. I think they're finally hitting their stride. Bryce Young has seen pressure sometimes, but I think that's also just because, well, you're playing in the SEC. You're going to see some really good pass rushers, and even good offensive linemen will allow a pressure here or there. But overall, I have been thoroughly impressed with the Alabama offensive line and what they've really done since that Florida game 2 weeks ago, albeit against Southern Miss and Ole Miss. But I am really excited to see what this offensive line does moving forward, especially if it's the offensive line that I saw on Saturday in Tuscaloosa against the number 12 Ole Miss Rebels. Last overreaction I have is there's no team on Alabama's level. There is no team on Alabama's level. And I get it. I saw what Georgia did against Arkansas in Ophir, putting the Razorbacks just crying back to Fayetteville. I do think Georgia's the second best team in the country. I really, really do. But Alabama is by far the best team in the country. And I don't know if it's close enough for me to even put Georgia in the same tier, right? We go back to these offensive stats against Ole Miss here. 451 yards, 241 through the air, 210 on the ground. That's the most impressive part. But if you are a good offense, right, you are not going to turn the ball over. And Alabama just simply doesn't do that. Bryce Young did have a costly interception today when it comes down to it in the red zone. You don't like to see that. But when you're talking about Bryce Young only having 2 interceptions and really 1 because, well, 1 went off of Jamison Williams' hands last week against Southern Miss to cause an interception. This team is an offensive football team, which is absolutely scary because of the overreaction I had at number 2, saying that they have the best defense in the country. We're talking about an offensive team, in my opinion, that you can put up there with anybody, right? We're talking about really arguably the best quarterback in the nation, and I think he is. I think you're talking about a couple of the best offensive linemen in the country, especially Evan Neal. And when it comes down to weapons, they aren't household names, maybe like the, Jalen Waddles or the Jerry Judys of the world quite yet. But I love, and I mean love, Jamison Williams, John Mechie, and then you got JoJo Earl as well and Brian Robinson in the backfield. This is an electric offense that Alabama has, and we're talking about the defense being great. The scary part is this is an offensive football team, and they are proving it week in and week out when it is important. And listen, I mean, it's going to be fun watching these guys, especially this coming up weekend down in College Station when they'll face off against the number 15 Texas A&M Aggies. It'll be a late kickoff. Alabama will look to get its fourth, yes, you heard me right, fourth top 25 victory on the season. The Crimson Tide, once again, just, really just kicking ass and taking names at this point, if we're being honest about it. I mean, Bryce Young, you're ridiculous. You got to stop. But, again, they're looking for another top 25 victory. Let me know down in the comments who you have. I better be seeing a lot of Alabama Crimson Tides down there. Type Bama for them, and I'm not even going to tell you what to type on the Aggies. It's not worth it. They're not going to win that one. We'll be back later this week previewing this one, but hit that big red button and stay in the know all season long on your Alabama Crimson Tide.